The transmission came through at 3:42 a.m. Earth Central Time. Most stations would have logged it as another scrambled alien distress signal, static, some weird glyphs, maybe a screeching sound, but not me. I was on night watch at Sector Kilo, up in orbit around Europa, and I'd been monitoring rogue signals since the Edris event. My name doesn't matter. Names don't mean much when you've buried half your unit under alien soil. The message wasn't scrambled. It was clear, and it was begging. We are the Solari. Please, to any sentient civilization. We're being hunted, our colonies burned, our people harvested. Is there anyone left who fights? The room went quiet. The AI interpreter decoded the alien dialect in seconds. There was no mistaking it. This wasn't bait, it wasn't a trap, and it sure as hell wasn't our problem. Not anymore. But Earth answered anyway. They shouldn't have. Not because we weren't capable, but because when Earth responds, things die. We don't send diplomats anymore. We don't send rescue teams. We send predators. 3 days later, I was sitting in briefing with Commander Grant, an old bastard with more scars than skin. He stood in front of the holoboard, the projection showing Solari homeworlds dotted in red. You boys remember Operation Daggerfall? He asked, voice hoarse like gravel under boots. Nobody spoke. We all remembered Daggerfall. That op changed everything. Human soldiers reduced a slave-trading insectoid race to ash in 12 days. No mercy, no survivors. Grant pointed to the screen. This time? Same rules. The enemy's called the Dragon. 7 feet tall, armored, zero empathy, and they breed inside living hosts. Sound familiar? He paused. But this time they're not coming to us. We're going to them. I looked around. These weren't politicians or peacekeepers in this room. Every man here was chosen for one reason, because Earth had no angels left to send. Only us devils. You are not saviors, Grant growled. You are not here to bring peace. You are Earth's apex predators. You're the reason the stars go quiet when they see our flag. The Dragon made a mistake. They thought the Solari were soft. They were, but they asked for help. And help, in our language, means blood. We launched from the Templar-class destroyer Sovereign Vengeance. You don't ride on a ship like that unless you're ready to be written out of history. The ship wasn't even painted. Just black armor and kill marks. I was squad lead for Unit 19. 5 men, no backup, full autonomy. We weren't expected to survive, just to kill more of them than they did of us. The Solari met us on the edge of their last orbiting station. Fragile-looking creatures, thin limbs, high foreheads, big watery eyes. One of them came up to me, trembling. Will you save us? I didn't answer. I just adjusted the magnetic lock on my rifle and walked past him. Because that's the thing. We don't save. We avenge. The first drop was chaos. Firestorms over the planet's surface. Dragon ships moving like infected metal insects, swarming the skies. But we hit dirt hard. Boots on the ground, no speeches, no waiting. My first kill was a Dragon scout. Lunged at me from a tunnel, mouth lined with bone hooks. One round to the chest didn't stop it. The second one split its head like fruit. They weren't used to prey that bites back. That night we slept in the mud under dead trees that had been twisted by Dragon terraforming. No tents, no warmth, just the smell of blood and sulfur. One of my men, Carter, lit a cigarette. I gave him a look, but he shrugged. If they know where we are, he said, blowing smoke, let 'em come. I'm done playing defense. That was the difference. The Solari cried for help. Earth didn't cry. We loaded up, dropped in, and made the galaxy remember why humans were feared. And this was just the beginning. We moved like ghosts. By the second day, Unit 19 had already racked up 14 confirmed Dragon kills. Not that we were counting for medals. We didn't wear those anymore. The bodies didn't matter. The message did. Every kill was a warning shot to the stars. Earth doesn't forget, and we don't forgive. We found our first Solari refugee cluster buried in the mountain caverns of Lyrex 4, their last habitable moon. The Dragon had torn the world apart. Glass craters where cities used to be, atmosphere so poisoned you could smell metal in the air through sealed suits. We didn't land gently. We crashed through with drop pods at terminal velocity. We wanted them to feel it. The Solari hid in the dark, scattered in ragged groups like kicked dogs. Carter knelt beside one of them, trying to get a count. The Solari wouldn't speak to him, just kept repeating some phrase in their tongue, rocking back and forth. I tapped into the translator feed. They are coming. They are always coming. They cannot be stopped. Wrong. They could. One of the elders approached, shaking in their pale skin like a sheet in the wind. There is nothing left, he said to me, his eyes wide and ancient. Our gods have abandoned us. The Dragon are the new gods. I stared at him through my visor. Then I said flatly, "Tell your gods they've got competition." We left at dusk. Couldn't risk staying. The Dragon were hive-minded. The longer you stayed still, the more they swarmed. We rigged the caverns with mines, told the Solari to stay silent and keep their lights out. They asked us where we were going. Back to hell, I said. We dropped toward the Dragon birthing pits. That's where it got worse. I've seen death before. Watched comrades bled out on alien sand, listened to final breaths gurgling through comms. But what we found in those pits, that wasn't death. That was breeding. Thousands of Solari corpses, hollowed out and hanging upside down from bone hooks, their chests torn open, black mucus seeping from their ribs. The Dragon larvae fed through tubes connected to still-living hosts. It wasn't just conquest. It was ritual. Domination in the most vile, absolute way. Carter dry-heaved. Vance threw up inside his suit and didn't even care. I just stood there. Because anger is clean, but hate is patient. And I had waited years to feel something again. This was it. No strategy, no diplomacy. Just a simple directive. Erase them. We hit the pit hard. No warning. Thermal charges, smart rounds. We swept the perimeter, flanking from 3 sides. The Dragon came screaming, 6-limbed beasts with flesh armor that shimmered like obsidian, serrated mandibles twitching with hunger. "Contact!" Vance yelled. I dropped 2 in the first 30 seconds. Center mass. Didn't stop them. I adjusted fire, neck shots, then side entry through the secondary respiratory glands under the 3rd rib. Boom, drop, move. These weren't beasts. They were soldiers. Smart, coordinated, vicious. They fought like wolves, but thought like strategists. The kind of enemy Earth used to be scared of. But not anymore. Carter took a hit. Tail spike to the shoulder, knocked him flat. I dragged him behind the ridge, yanked the spike out with a sickening schlick, and jammed sealant foam into the wound. "Can you walk?" "Hell no," he grimaced. I handed him the launcher. "Then shoot. I'll do the walking." We turned that pit into a grave, burned it clean. I personally torched the egg chamber. No survivors. Even the juveniles. Especially the juveniles. Mercy had a cost, and Earth stopped paying it after the Titan Wars. After the smoke cleared, we logged the location, marked it as sanitized. That's how we recorded exterminations now. Sanitized. Like we were mopping up biohazards. But these weren't viruses, they were monsters. And monsters don't get second chances. By day 5, the Dragon knew we were here. Not just that we existed, but what we were. The planet began to shift. No more patrols. No more scattered groups. They pulled back, organized, which meant one thing, they were building something. "Fortress," Grant confirmed via secure uplink. "Underground. 6 miles east of your position. Probably using the Solari as forced diggers. You've got one job, Unit 19. Breach and burn. Leave no trace. No air support, no reinforcements, no evac if it went sideways. We didn't expect any. We moved at nightfall. The terrain was jagged obsidian fields with acidic mist rising off the cracks. Vance's boots started corroding halfway through the march. We kept going. Pain meant alive. When we reached the fortress, we knew we were in their heartland. Black spires stretching into the sky, carved with symbols that pulsed red like veins. Rows of chained Solari dragged stones with their bare hands, eyes dead, tongues cut. No guards, no alarms. That was the first clue something was wrong. "Why are they letting us see this?" I asked aloud. Then the ground split. Dragon ambush. Dozens, maybe hundreds. They burst from the soil like ants from a kicked nest. We were surrounded instantly. I yelled for fallback, but the route we came through was already sealed behind shifting rock. Trapped. Carter screamed as one tackled him, dragged him down, claws ripping through armor like foil. I unloaded a full clip into it, then the next. Blood sprayed my visor. I couldn't even tell if Carter was alive under the pile of limbs. I don't remember how long we fought. Maybe 10 minutes, maybe a lifetime. It was just noise, rage, and blood. Vance got torn in half. Simmons was skewered. When the dust settled, only 3 of us stood. Me, Carter, bleeding out, and Brody, who had a broken leg and a 1,000-yard stare. We didn't win. We just weren't dead yet. The Dragon didn't finish us off. They pulled back again. Let us crawl into the ruins of their fortress. It wasn't mercy, it was insult. They wanted us to see, inside the fortress, the walls were alive. Not metaphorical, literally pulsing tissue. Dragon tech wasn't mechanical, it was biological. Grown, not built. We moved through corridors that breathed. Chambers filled with throbbing organs connected by glowing veins. And in the center? A throne, if you could call it that. Twice the size. Scars crisscrossing its face. Eyes burning with blue flame. This was no drone. This was leadership. It stared at us. Didn't speak, didn't move. Just watched as if amused. Then it did something I didn't expect. It smiled. And for the first time in years, I felt something close to fear. I raised my weapon. It didn't flinch. I fired. The round never made it. A barrier flared to life around the creature, absorbing the impact like water catching a pebble. The energy dissipated, and it tilted its head, still smiling. The message was clear. We are not afraid of you anymore. That broke something in me, because that's all we had left, fear. It was our weapon, our legacy, the stories they whispered in the dark corners of the galaxy. Don't anger the humans, don't wake Earth. And here it was, awake, staring us down and laughing. I grabbed Carter's limp body and dragged him out of the throne room. Brody covered us, limping on a shattered leg. We made it 200 meters before the fortress shook behind us. Not from bombs, from hatching. Thousands of larvae, coming up through the floor, climbing walls, swarming ceiling. It wasn't a fortress. It was a breeding hive. And it had just opened. We ran, didn't look back. No time for goodbyes, no time for revenge. Just fire trails behind us as we triggered every charge we had left, collapsing the upper tunnels. It wouldn't stop them. But maybe it would slow them down. We stumbled into evac coordinates, barely alive. 3 men entered that mission. 2 came out, 1 unconscious. The sky was red behind us. The planet screamed. Grant's voice came through. "Mission status?" I replied coldly. "Compromised." They're not scared anymore. "Static, then." Then we'll remind them. I looked down at Carter's unconscious form. Because here's the thing. You don't push Earth. You don't humiliate its soldiers. You don't laugh at our pain. Unless you're ready for extinction. And the Dragon had just volunteered. The shuttle ride back to the Sovereign Vengeance was dead silent. No chatter, no debrief. Just the low hum of engines and the distant beat of my pulse in my ears. Carter lay across the bench, sedated, half his side stapled and sealed. Brody was propped against the wall with a morphine pack in his thigh, his leg held together with carbon splints in spite. Me? I just stared out the window, watching the Dragon world burn behind us in the dark. Grant met us at the med bay. He didn't say a word when he saw the state we were in, his jaw clenched, fists tight behind his back. Then he simply nodded once and walked out. That's how you know it's bad, when the brass doesn't yell. 2 hours later, the entire crew was called to the war deck. 700 soldiers in full gear, lined up like statues, faces grim and eyes hollow. The Sovereign Vengeance had never been this quiet. Even the ship seemed to hold its breath. Grant stood at the front under the pale blue hollow map that displayed the Dragon system. He didn't give a speech. Grant didn't believe in motivation. He believed in mission. They didn't just kill our men, he said, voice low, slow. They showed them off. They fed off the message it would send. A pause. They want the galaxy to see humans crawl again. Bleed. Beg. His hand closed into a fist. Wrong species. Then the screen shifted. 10 targets lit up across the system. Dragon hive cities, fortress moons, breeding satellites, fuel stations, command centers. Operation Hellmouth, he said. All units, all divisions. We're not holding anymore. We're not patrolling. We're not advising. He looked up, cold steel in his eyes. This is extinction. Every soldier raised their hand in salute. No cheers, no morale chants. This wasn't some fantasy war film. We weren't heroes. We were the backlash, the overcorrection. We were vengeance wrapped in blood and sent across the stars. And I was leading the first wave. 3 days later, we were back on the ground. Only this time, we didn't drop quiet. We rained fire. Thousands of drop pods punched through the Dragon sky like a meteor storm. EMPs disabled their towers. Drone swarms blotted out their air defenses. And then we hit them, hard and fast. My squad wasn't Unit 19 anymore. There wasn't a Unit 19. Now we were the Reapers. Black armor, no insignia, no ranks, just killers. Brody was back, leg wrapped in cybernetics, walking like death itself. Carter was in a neural suit, operating the artillery drone from the skies. The Dragon nearly killed him, and now he was the one bringing their apocalypse from orbit. The landing zone was their central hive world. Unpronounceable name, but we called it Nest Prime. The air was thick with soot and pheromonal toxin. Dragon fought in layered stench clouds to communicate. They marked their territory with scent. Not anymore. We pumped suppressants through the atmosphere to jam their senses. You could almost feel the panic in the way they moved, disoriented, confused. But they still fought hard. Wave after wave, they swarmed. 10-legged beasts with spears of living bone. Flying units that dropped acid sacks from the sky. Ground burrowers that came up like landmines on legs. We lost the first 3 squads in the first hour. No survivors. Brody and I held the North Ridge with 2 machine nests and a scorched pile of bodies. Ammo, he yelled. I tossed him a fresh pack. Use it fast. We're moving in 20. He smirked through blood-smeared teeth. Thought we were holding position. I looked down the ridge, where the hive tower shimmered like a tumor in the distance. We don't hold anymore. We pushed. No backup, just us. The tower was alive. I mean, alive. The walls pulsed with rhythm, like lungs. Our boots squelched with every step. Carter dropped in an orbital strike just ahead of us, creating a hole through the eastern face. We dove in, shoulder to shoulder, cutting through corridors of chittering madness. The deeper we went, the stranger it got. Symbols carved in the walls began to change, less warlike, more religious, like we weren't just in a base, we were in their cathedral. Then we saw it, the heart of the hive. A chamber so massive it made my stomach twist. Bioluminescent sacs clung to the walls. Thousands of dragon eggs, larvae, dozens of priest-class dragon guarding them, the same bastards who had butchered planets. I didn't hesitate. I threw the charges, every single one. And then I looked at Brody. Light it. He smiled like a devil, and did. The blast cracked the hive's spine. Flames engulfed the room. Screams, high-pitched, alien, horrible, echoed across the tower. The dragon tried to swarm us, but by then it was too late. Carter's drones were already on their way, raining tungsten from the clouds. The tower collapsed in on itself, and we ran out through walls of smoke and fire, every inch of us scorched and coughing but alive. Outside, the skyline was lit with war. Earth had brought the apocalypse. The reports came in fast. Hive Moon Gamma leveled. Dragon breeding ship, Zelak, destroyed. Fortress Cras, 22, nuked from orbit. High Queen Nest, still active. That last one changed everything. The dragon weren't just a swarm. They were organized, ruled. The High Queen wasn't just a leader. She was the source, the intelligence, the will, the ancient mother of all dragon hives. And she wasn't on any planet. She was inside a living dreadnought, a biomechanical monstrosity the size of a small moon, cloaked, hidden, somewhere near the outer edge of the system. Grant's message came through 2 hours later. New mission, decapitation strike. He paused. And I'm leading it. That shut everyone up. Grant hadn't left command deck in years. He was old school, fought in the Martian uprising, bled on Ganymede, survived Titan's civil war. If he was going in, it meant one thing. This was personal. We mobilized everything, 4 dreadnoughts, 2 full battalions, dozens of Black Ops squads, every asset Earth had in the sector. We found her 3 days later, orbiting a shattered dwarf star, feeding on the broken planetary crust like a parasite. And she was waiting. She spoke, not with words, not through channels, directly into our minds. You fear your extinction, the voice hissed, but you forget. You are the invaders now. We simply defend what is ours. I felt blood drip from my nose. Others collapsed, screaming. Grant stood unfazed. I don't fear extinction, he growled. I welcome it, if it means you come first. And then we fired. Every gun, every missile, every rail cannon. The void lit up like Armageddon. Her ship screamed, a real, tangible sound in the vacuum, vibrating through bone and metal. But she fought back. Her ship birthed smaller vessels from its flesh, living ships, grown from biomass, screaming as they flew. They tore into our fleet. Dreadnoughts split in half. Fighters devoured mid-flight. Our losses piled fast. Grant's command ship was hit dead on. We watched it spin, aflame, falling towards the star below. No ejection, no escape pods. He went down with it. But not before launching the kill switch. The Nova Lance, Earth's final weapon, a micro-star bomb compressed into a rail shell, launched at sub-relativistic speed straight into the Queen's heart. Her ship exploded from the inside. The blast ripped space apart, a shockwave so bright it blinded half our sensors. The Queen's psychic scream nearly fried our minds. Her connection with the Dragon broke in an instant, and all over the system they collapsed, convulsing like ants whose queen had been crushed. We won. But we didn't cheer. Because we knew what came next. They'll remember what we did. They'll tell stories of how the humans answered a call for help by becoming monsters worse than anything the galaxy had seen. But they won't tell the full truth. They won't mention that we warned them. They won't say we were the ones who stayed on our dying planet, quiet, while the rest of the galaxy laughed and watched us fall. They only started fearing us when we stood back up, teeth bared. I visited Carter in the recovery ward a week later. He was conscious again, arm gone, ribs shattered, half his face covered in synth skin. "You see it?" he asked weakly. I nodded. "She's gone." He closed his eyes. "Good." I hated her voice. Brody walked in behind me, limping slightly, holding a data pad. "They're saying we committed war crimes," he muttered. I smirked. "Let them." He stared at me. "So what now?" I looked out the viewport, where the last of the burning Dragon wreckage drifted across the stars. "Now," I said slowly, "we wait." For what? For the next time someone cries for help. Because when Earth answers, we don't send heroes, we send hunters. The war was over, they said. That's what they stamped on the debrief files, the news feeds, the sanitized reports fed back to Earth. The galactic comm networks repeated the same headline on loop. Dragon Hive Queen terminated. Threat neutralized. Earth delivers justice. Justice. I laughed when I read that. Not because it was funny. Nothing was funny anymore. But because whoever wrote it had clearly never waded through dragon blood, never heard a human scream while getting eaten alive from the inside, and sure as hell never watched a friend choke to death with a look that said, "We should have just stayed home." We didn't deliver justice. We delivered vengeance. And that kind of retribution doesn't end with a clean victory. It stains everything. The sovereign vengeance limped through orbit now. Scarred. Burned. Held together by grafts of stolen Dragon tech and Earth steel. Most of the crew were gone. Some disintegrated in vacuum. Others buried planetside. The medbay had more silence than screaming now, and that silence was worse. Carter was awake, but not really alive. The trauma meds kept him numbed out, his eyes glassy and unfocused. The neural suit had to be cut from his body. What was left of his limbs looked more machine than man. But he was breathing, and after this war, that counted. Brody barely spoke anymore. He walked, but only out of obligation, not purpose. I caught him once staring out at the stars, a loaded pistol sitting on the rail beside him. He didn't look sad, just empty. Me? I got promoted, field captain, ribbon, citation, even a medal named after Grant. I didn't show up to the ceremony, because medals don't mean anything when all they're doing is pinning a target on your chest for the next war. 2 weeks after the Hive Queen's death, we received a message. Not from Earth. Not from any known coalition. From the Solari. They wanted to meet. Private channel. No broadcast. No interpreter required. Just coordinates. A desolate asteroid in an unclaimed system. 1 ship. No guards. Against command protocol, I went. Took Carter and Brody with me. Part of me didn't trust the message. Another part hoped it was a trap. That would have been easier to deal with. We docked on the asteroid station, guns drawn, hearts flatlined. The Solari envoy, a woman, or what passed as one in their species, met us in a glass chamber lit only by the slow, dying light of a distant star. She bowed. We didn't. "I wanted to thank you," she said, voice translated cleanly through the embedded ear rigs. "Your people saved what remained of ours." Brody scoffed. "What's left? A few thousand hiding in tunnels and burned-out moons?" The envoy didn't blink. "Yes, but few is more than none." She turned to me. You led the first wave, didn't you? They speak your name like myth among our survivors. They shouldn't, I said. I didn't come to save anyone. I came to end something. And you did. There was a long pause. Then her face shifted, that telltale Solari sign of discomfort or shame. But now, we must speak of the cost. I felt my jaw tighten. Here it comes. She slid a data chip across the table. Surveillance logs, post-strike recordings, civilian damages, I didn't touch it. You want an apology? No, she said quietly. I want the truth. That was worse. Because the truth was ugly. We hadn't just destroyed Dregan military forces, we'd leveled cities, entire breeding ecosystems, without identifying which chambers were military and which were refuge. We'd used firestorms, orbital strikes, and seismic bombs in populated zones. Our kill ratio didn't distinguish between threat and bystander, because we'd stopped caring. Because when the first human child was pulled from a Dragon egg sac, hollow-eyed and dead, something in us snapped, and we decided the galaxy didn't deserve our mercy. I met her eyes. We did what we had to. She nodded slowly. And someday, I fear, someone will say the same. About us. That stayed with me. For weeks. Even when we returned to Earth. Home wasn't how I remembered it. The sky was still gray. The cities still overcrowded, cracked by pollution and riots. The people still angry. About food, about jobs, about taxes. The war was just a headline now. Another conflict for the news scroll, another distraction for the poor. When I walked the streets, nobody recognized me. That was the blessing of war. The uniform hides who you are. But every now and then, a stranger would glance at me, see the scars, and look away quickly. Not out of disgust, out of guilt. They knew what had been done. Maybe not in detail. But they knew enough. And they didn't want to be reminded. Carter never made it home. He asked to be discharged into a private hospital on Ganymede. Said he didn't want his parents seeing what he'd become. Brody disappeared. I tracked him once to the Martian Outlands, a settlement of rogue terraformers. No communications, no systems, no wars, just red dust and silence. I didn't blame him. I stayed in contact with the Solari. Not officially, Command would have gutted me for it, but quietly. They were rebuilding. Slowly. Cautiously. They'd even started training some of their own to defend themselves. One of them sent me a message. You gave us fear. Now we teach courage. That hit harder than I expected. One night, I got a request to speak at the academy. New recruits. Fresh faces. Young men who thought war was a story, not a sickness. I stood on stage, spotlights bright, hundreds of eyes watching. I said nothing for a full minute. Then I spoke. You want to know what it feels like to kill something bigger than you? To crush a monster under your boot and not feel victory? Only silence? Nobody answered. I continued. You want to know what the galaxy smells like when it dies? You want to hear what bone sounds like when it cracks under an atmospheric shell burst? Some squirmed. Good. You think wearing this uniform makes you a savior. It doesn't. It makes you a weapon, and a weapon doesn't cry when it's used, but it does rust when forgotten. I looked out at the sea of faces. You want to be a hero? Go work in a burn ward. You want to be a soldier? Be ready to bury your friends. Be ready to kill kids with claws and call it justice. Be ready to come home with victory and never sleep again. Silence. Then one kid in the back stood up and saluted. Sir, what do we fight for? I stared at him, and for the first time, I gave the honest answer. For each other. Because no one else gives a damn. The war ended. The bodies were buried. The monsters were burned. But the scars stayed. On our minds. on our dreams. And somewhere, out in the dark between stars, the galaxy learned the truth. If you cry for help loud enough, Earth will answer. But you better pray we never have to. Because when we come, we don't come to save. We come to end. It was supposed to be over. That's what they kept telling us, on the screens, in the broadcasts, through the polished voices of Earth's political mouthpieces. Peace secured, humanity victorious, Earth re-established as a galactic power. Bullshit. There was no peace, just a different kind of war. This one was quieter, dirtier, fought in back rooms and back doors, fought inside minds that couldn't stop hearing the screams of creatures who no longer existed. I was stationed on Luna Base now, not for combat, for show. They called it ambassadorial liaison work. I called it standing around in a uniform that didn't fit anymore, shaking hands with alien delegates who flinched when I looked at them too long. Everyone wanted to thank the humans now. Everyone wanted an alliance, a signature, a security treaty, anything to make sure Earth never turned its wrath in their direction next. We were the monsters under their bed now, the ones they smiled at through gritted teeth while praying we never got hungry again. On the surface, Earth had won. But underneath, Earth had changed. We all had. I saw Brody again. He showed up one night, unannounced, in a ragged civilian jacket and boots caked with Martian dust. No ID, no orders, just walked into the Luna bar like he hadn't vanished for months. I almost didn't recognize him. He looked leaner, older, like he'd been carrying something too heavy for too long. He sat down across from me without a word and ordered 2 whiskeys. We drank the first in silence. Then he said, "They're building a new army." I blinked. "Who?" He didn't answer right away, just reached into his jacket and slid a tablet across the table. No encryption, no military classification, just a simple logo. UNSRP, United Nations Special Reclamation Protocol. "What the hell is this?" "They're not rebuilding fleets," he said, voice low. "They're rebuilding us." I read through the file. It was light on details, heavy on fluff. New training program, new command structure, new soldiers bred for adaptive combat environments. It sounded clean, efficient, scientific, until I saw the list of names and recognized the first one. Carter Rhodes, reassigned. You've got to be kidding me. My voice cracked. He's still on Ganymede. Brody shook his head. They pulled him last month, out of rehab, didn't even notify family. He's not in recovery anymore. He's in a facility, black site. They're testing new neural sync tech, drones controlled by thought, faster than AI. I stared at the screen, heart turning cold. That tech's not safe. No, Brody said, but it's fast, and that's all Command wants now. My hands curled into fists. So we win a war by becoming monsters, and now they want to manufacture more? It's worse than that. He slid another file over. Project Regret. It wasn't a joke. That was the name, an Earth-run lab located beneath Europa's southern ice shelf. Purpose: to recover, reconstruct, and repurpose non-human biology for defense and deterrent operations. They weren't just rebuilding humans, they were rebuilding the Dregan. Not all of them had died. Some had been captured, frozen, preserved. And Earth wasn't exterminating them. It was experimenting on them. I thought we wiped it all, I muttered. We wiped what we could see, Brody said. Turns out they were smarter than we thought. Left sleeper strains, DNA spores. Command's been collecting samples for months. They're trying to harness what made the Dragon a threat. Turn it into a weapon. He nodded. I drained the second whiskey in one swallow. I should have known. Earth doesn't stop wars, it reinvents them. That night I requested a secure channel back to Central Command. They denied it. I requested clearance to visit Ganymede. Denied. I tried contacting Carter's listed care center. The number had been disconnected. I called in a favor from a Solari contact. The same one who'd thanked me for saving her people. She owed me. She got me access to the Europa logs. What I saw confirmed every worst instinct I had. The Dragon weren't dead. They were working for us now, controlled by neural suppression systems, implants, pain triggers, reprogrammed to obey command sequences without language or autonomy. They moved like puppets, trained in corridors to simulate combat against projected alien threats. Earth had domesticated the galaxy's most feared species. And worse, Carter's name was attached to the control uplink. They'd plugged him in, used his broken mind, the same one that had watched half our squad die, as the baseline for remote instinct override, turned his pain into a weapon interface. He wasn't just being used, he was being bled dry from the inside out. I tried to reach him. Every message bounced, every inquiry flagged. So I went rogue. Brody came with me. We stole a scout ship under diplomatic clearance, said we were delivering updated treaties to the Jovian colonies. Nobody questioned us. Why would they? We were heroes. Legends. They forgot that legends, when pushed far enough, become nightmares. The descent into Europa's under-ice hangar was slow, silent. We spoofed the security ping and got through 3 layers before anyone noticed. By then, we were already inside the complex. It didn't look like a lab. It looked like a prison. White walls, biohazard signs, doors sealed with retina scans and biometric locks, and the sounds? Not human. Not Dragon. Something between. We found Carter in room 9F. He was floating in a cradle of wires and gel, suspended between life and death, skull fused with neural implants that pulsed in time with his heartbeat. His eyes were open, but he didn't see us. Not really. He blinked, slowly, as if waking from a dream he couldn't escape. "Hey," I whispered. "It's me." His mouth moved, but no sound came. Brody touched the control panel. "They've locked his vocal cords, probably to stop him from screaming." I felt sick. On the monitor beside him, we saw what he was controlling. A Dragon hybrid unit, stomping through a simulated battlefield. The feedback loop showed pain. He was feeling what it felt. Every shot, every hit, every kill. He wasn't just commanding it. He was it. We pulled the plugs. The alarms went off instantly. Sirens, lights, lockdowns. We carried him out, half dead and twitching. I shot 2 guards. Brody stabbed a doctor who tried to trigger a security field. We stole another ship. We didn't wait for clearance. We didn't need it anymore. We took Carter back to Mars, not the colonies, the outlands, the part of Mars where Earth's hand doesn't reach. Yet. He didn't wake up for 2 days. When he did, his first words were slurred. "Am I still in there?" I shook my head. "You're home." He tried to smile. Failed. "I don't feel human anymore." I sat beside him and said what no one else had. "Neither do we. The war is over. But peace? Peace is a lie. It's a word they sell to the broken, a way to cover what they're still doing in the dark. The Solari don't call us saviors anymore. They've started building their own fleets, quietly, without asking. The rest of the galaxy has gone silent. Not because they fear another invasion, but because they know we've already started the next one. Not with bombs, but with science, and monsters, and men too damaged to know the difference. Carter never fully came back. Not mentally, not physically. His body was alive, stitched together by machines and Earth's best post-war medicine. But his mind? His mind was like walking through a house after a fire, still standing, but charred in places no one could fix. Some mornings, he'd stare out across the Martian outlands and not blink for hours. Others, he'd talk to people who weren't there. He called them the Silent Ones. I never asked who they were. I already knew. They were the Dragon he'd been forced to wear, the monsters they'd plugged into his head. Every kill he made while connected, Every movement, every drop of blood, all of it echoed inside him now. He wasn't a man anymore. He was a haunted machine that used to have a name. And Earth had done that to him. Mars was colder than I remembered. Not the temperature, the silence. This part of the planet had no domes, no government reach, no polished press statements or politicians in cleaned-up uniforms. Just red dust, cracked boots, and people trying to live without being seen. Brody had contacts here. He'd always known how to disappear. They helped us set Carter up in a bunker, far from the scanning satellites, off the grid, deep in a crater-turned settlement called Black Hollow. It wasn't paradise, but it was something close to forgotten, which, for us, was heaven. I spent most days watching the sky, waiting, not for a signal, for the reckoning. Because peace, as Earth sold it, was an illusion, one I knew wouldn't last. I was right. It started with the disappearances, not civilians, not politicians, soldiers, war veterans, quietly pulled from colonies, bases, and fringe worlds, all former combatants, all survivors of the Dragon campaign, all either missing or listed under classified relocation. Except I knew what that meant now. UNSRP was back at it. Project Regret hadn't been shut down. It had been buried deeper. Brody brought the first report. A smuggler intercepted on his route to the Saturn trade belt. Said he'd seen something drifting outside the asteroid ring near Titan's dark side. Something big. Dark. Alive. I didn't want to believe it. Then I saw the footage. Black and white, grainy, but clear enough. It was a ship, not built, but grown. Dragon architecture, unmistakable. But it wasn't fully alien. Human insignias marked the hull, redacted serial numbers, modified hangar bays, launch tubes built for Earth-class drones. They weren't just experimenting anymore. They were field testing. I leaned over the console and whispered, "They built a goddamn hybrid warship." Brody didn't answer. He didn't have to. We knew what came next. They'd test it, then they'd duplicate it, then they'd scale it, and eventually, they'd deploy it. I reached out to the Solari again. I hadn't spoken to them since we rescued Carter. There was no trust left, just mutual fear. But they responded fast this time. Their message was blunt. "We know. We've seen it too." The rest of the galaxy had gone quiet. Too quiet. Species that once begged for Earth's protection were now building defense grids, firing up old weapons, forming new coalitions in the shadows. No one was saying it out loud, but everyone was thinking the same thing. What if Earth is the next threat? They were right to worry. I'd seen what Earth was willing to do to its own people. What would stop it from doing worse to others? One night, Carter spoke. Not in whispers, not in broken half-sentences. Full words, like the man I used to know. He sat up in bed, pale skin lit by the flickering solar bulb in our crater shelter, and said, "They're calling to me again." I froze. He didn't blink. "They want me to come back." "Who?" I asked, though I already knew. He looked me dead in the eye. "The hybrids, the ship, whatever it is. They want me to finish it. You're not going back there. They'll come for me." "Then let them," I said, hand already gripping the sidearm under my jacket. "We'll end it here." He didn't respond. But the look in his eyes? He knew they were already on their way. They came 2 days later. No announcements, no blaring horns, no drones, just a quiet rumble in the night sky, and the arrival of 3 black crafts with no markings, no windows, no light. United Nations Special Rapporteur on the Right to Peace Recovery Division. Earth's quiet hunters. I saw them land beyond the ridge. I counted 6 figures, all in prototype exosuits. Not military issue. Heavier, smoother, biometric sealed. probably connected to AI decision nodes, allowing reflex speed targeting. These weren't recovery teams. They were execution squads. I woke Brody. Carter was already awake, sitting on the edge of his cot, staring out into the dark like he felt them coming. "They won't stop," he said softly. "Not until I'm back in that chair. Or dead." "No," I said, chambering around. "They'll get both." Brody handed Carter a compact SMG. "You sure you can still shoot?" He stared down at it. "I'm not aiming at them. I'm aiming at what they turned me into." I didn't understand that at the time, but I would. The firefight was fast, brutal, and surgical. They moved like machines. Every shot, center mass, no wasted ammo, no panic. But they underestimated something. Pain. Because Earth had trained us in it, baptized us in it. And when you've lived through a war that made nightmares look polite, a few enhanced suits don't scare you anymore. Brody took the first two, dropped them with grenades after leading them into the lower crater. I flanked another and put 2 rounds into his backplate before cracking the helmet with a rock. The last 3? Carter took them. He didn't hesitate, didn't flinch. He moved like he remembered everything the dragon taught him. Every maneuver, every limb snap, every ruthless strike. And he used it. When it was over, he stood there drenched in blood, panting, gun trembling in his grip. And then he dropped it. "They'll just send more," he said. "Then we send a message," I replied. "We buried the bodies in the cold Martian rock. But we kept the ship. And the suits. We weren't going to run anymore. We were going to war again. But this time it wasn't against aliens. It was against what Earth had become. A machine without brakes. A system that had forgotten how to feel. They made us into weapons. And now? We were pointing ourselves back at them. Not because we wanted to, because we had to. Because peace isn't the absence of war. It's just the quiet before the next betrayal. And Earth had run out of people to betray, except its own. We were done hiding. You only get pushed so far before you stop stepping back and start digging in. And after what they did to Carter, after what I saw on Europa, what Brody found on Titan's dark side, I didn't want answers anymore. I wanted wreckage. But you don't just declare war on Earth. You bleed it, quietly, bit by bit. We started with the UNSRP relay station near Mars orbit. Remote, lightly manned, mostly automated, just a hub to move encrypted data back and forth from black sites to command. We hit it at 2 a.m. Standard Martian. No warning, no mercy. Brody hacked the outer nav shell, redirected the satellite's solar array to burn out their motion sensors. Carter moved with that same dead calm he had in the war. Ghost silent, teeth clenched, eyes hollow. I watched him slice through 2 guards like he was still wired into a Dragon hybrid. The worst part? He didn't even blink. He didn't hesitate. He just executed. We downloaded over 8 terabytes of classified data in less than 15 minutes. Base schematics, personnel lists, ongoing hybrid research, deployment orders for the next generation of adaptive warfare bioagents. Translation: more Carter copies. More humans turned into half-alive command conduits. More goddamn monsters wearing our faces. We wiped their local backups, sabotaged the long-range transmitter, then rigged the whole station with C-19. It took 6 minutes to detonate, and the sound that followed wasn't fire or steel. It was silence, the kind of silence that tells you you've started something you can't take back. We went dark after that. No signals, no movement, just ghost traces on long-range radar. We ran our ops out of a stolen mining freighter called the Hollow Man, stripped of tags, with a reactor older than most colonies. It stank of old oil and rot. Felt like home. Brody led intel coordination. Carter ran combat simulations. I handled planning, infiltration, and communication with the handful of ex-soldiers who still believed in us. We called ourselves the Null Order. Not rebels, not terrorists, just men who finally understood that Earth wasn't the planet we were born to protect. It was the thing we had to stop. First came the leaks. Encrypted files we fed anonymously into galactic networks, dossiers on Project Regret, video logs of the hybrid labs, audio recordings of screaming test subjects locked inside Dragon exoframes, still wearing their own skin like it belonged to someone else. The galaxy didn't want to believe it, so we made them watch. We forced their eyes open and showed them what Earth's peace really looked like. Clean uniforms over rotting souls. The backlash was instant. Solari media stations blasted the images non-stop. 3 minor worlds pulled out of the Earth Alliance. One former human colony in the Epsilon Belt declared neutrality and refused to pay Earth taxes, stating, "We won't fund war crimes." Command called it propaganda. We called it truth. That's when Earth sent him. Commander Marcus Steele. I'd fought under him during the siege of Vexor. Bastard used to spit blood and chew through steel. He ran black ops like a religion. Cold, efficient, loyal. They made him head of UNSRP enforcement after Grant died. He reached out to me. Direct communication. No encryption. No lies. "I know it's you," he said. "And I know what you took. You think you're saving them, but you're just handing weapons to people who'll aim them right back at us." I stared into the feed. "You already aimed it at us, Steele. You just didn't expect us to fire back." He leaned closer. "You're a good soldier, but you're no martyr. You don't die for a cause. You kill for the ones next to you. And right now, you're putting a target on all of them." He meant Brody. Carter. Every ghost in the system who still followed our trail. "You made us weapons," I said coldly. "Now we're choosing where we point ourselves." He gave me a hard, quiet nod. "Then I'll see you on the other end." And the comm went dark. 2 days later, they hit Black Hollow. A full UNSRP drone strike. Orbital kinetic rods. No warning, no evacuation window. Flattened the crater like it never existed. Civilian shelters. Rogue terraformers. Our old bunker. Gone. We weren't there. But they didn't know that. They'd already made the same mistake the Dragon made. They thought we'd run. They thought we'd hide. We were already en route to Saturn's Forge, a rogue shipyard hidden inside the fractured rings, built by deserters, smugglers, and ex-military engineers too bitter to retire. They still made warships there, not for governments, but for ghosts like us. We didn't ask for help. We bought it. 3 old strike ships, retrofitted with silent drives and blackout tech. 1 command craft, gutted from an old Earth corvette and repurposed as our floating dagger. We renamed it the Forsaken. Carter helped code its systems. Brody installed the breach armor. I sat in the captain's chair for the first time and felt it. Not pride. Not fear. Purpose. Our target was clear. Project Orpheus. The final stage of regret. A live prototype ship. 80% Dragon biomass, 20% human control infrastructure. Fully operational. Not yet deployed. Its brain? A human child, barely 16, ripped from a refugee camp and rewired for neural sync. They were going to use her to pilot the next generation of Dragon-Earth hybrids. She didn't volunteer. They called her the Key. We called her a hostage. She was held in orbit above Earth's moon, inside a military cradle called the Bastion. 5 decks deep, fortified, shielded, guarded by Steele himself. We didn't have a plan. We had a promise. We came in hot, no stealth, no deception, just full burn and teeth bared. Brody manned the railguns. Carter synced into the cyber drones, half of his body shaking as he linked into the command node one last time. We breached the outer hull with magnetic detonators and boarded mid-spin, 0 gravity, 0 warning. The fight inside? A blur. Steel, screams, flashbangs. We moved like monsters, because they made us that way. I found the girl in a cryopod, her brain laced with biosilicon and Dragon synapse wiring. Barely conscious, barely human. But she looked at me. She saw me. And she didn't cry. She just whispered, "Help me forget." I lifted her out, carried her like fire, and burned our way back through the halls. That's when Steele caught up. He met us at the exit bay, pulse rifle aimed at my chest. Brody raised his weapon. I raised mine. Carter was behind us, half collapsed, blood leaking from his nose. "You're making a mistake," Steele said. "No," I told him. "You already did." His finger twitched, but he didn't fire. "Where does it end?" he asked. "You think this saves her? There's 100 more. They'll build it all again." "I know," I said. "Then what's the point?" "The point," I said, "is that someone has to not be okay with it." I shot him. 3 rounds to the chest, clean, centered. He dropped without a sound. We got back to the Forsaken and vanished into the black. Now we drift. Outside Earth's reach. Outside Earth's lies. The girl, her name is Nira, sits in the med bay, hooked up to machines designed to separate her mind from what they wired into her. She's not crying. She's just breathing. And sometimes, that's enough. Carter sleeps in silence now. Brody watches the stars. Me? I write reports no one reads, in logs no one accesses, on a ship that shouldn't exist. Because even if we win, there's no parade, no statues, no flag, just a few broken men trying to undo what they once believed in. The girl didn't scream. Not when we unplugged the dragon flesh node from her spine. Not when her lungs seized mid-surgery. Not when Carter bled into his hands trying to stabilize her heartbeat while his own neural sync glitched every 30 seconds. She didn't scream because there was nothing left in her to scream with. They took that from her. They took her voice, her thoughts, her goddamn self, turned her into an interface for a weapon. Just another soft-boned sacrifice in Earth's grand strategy of winning wars it wasn't even fighting anymore. We kept her alive, barely, hooked to recycled oxygen, half her skull packed with biosoft that we didn't fully understand. The dragon tissue inside her was still active, not sentient, not resisting, but watching. Like it knew the war wasn't over. It wasn't. We were out of time, out of favors, out of fuel. And Earth? Earth was coming. They knew we had her, and they didn't care about damage control or diplomacy anymore. We weren't rogue soldiers. We were liabilities, broken men carrying a truth too heavy for peace to survive. So they lit the sky on fire. They sent the Loyal Ascendancy, Earth's newest class of war dreadnoughts, built with hybrid tech, cloaked in black plating etched with what looked like bone. It came through Jupiter's shadow like a myth. Big enough to make you forget gravity, quiet enough to make you question your own fear. It didn't broadcast. It didn't blink. It just moved. And we knew what it meant. Total elimination. We didn't have the firepower to match. We had the Forsaken, a scarred ex-military corvette with no fleet, no allies, no backup. But we had one thing they didn't. We knew exactly what they were. Because we were the first. The prototype monsters. The ghosts they couldn't control. The last soldiers of a war they wanted buried under medals and propaganda. Brody stood at the tactical screen, face pale, jaw clenched. They're running a blind sweep pattern, not even looking for a fight, just assuming we'll die quietly. Carter leaned on the console, breathing heavy. His nose had started bleeding again, the hybrid connection still screaming inside his skull. "We can't run," he said. "No," I answered, "but we can choose how we die." He looked at me, tired, dead behind the eyes. "We've done enough dying." That's when Nira, barely able to walk, staggered into the bridge. She looked up at the screens, saw the dreadnought, and whispered, "I know how to hurt it." We stared at her. "You shouldn't even be awake," Brody said. She didn't respond, just tapped a sequence into the console, a hidden access code. The dreadnought's bioflesh flickered. Carter's eyes widened. That's a kill switch. No, she said. It's a mirror, a neural feedback loop. If we bounce their hive signal back at full resonance, it doesn't shut them down. It forces them to feel everything they've done. You can do that? I asked. She didn't answer, just sat in the chair and connected herself to the feed. Her hands shook, eyes rolled back. Then the loyal ascendancy stuttered in its motion. Its lights dimmed. Its engine pulses faltered. Brody looked up. It's working, I nodded slowly. Time to speak their language. We broadcast the signal, not just to the dreadnought, to everyone. Every frequency, every open channel, civilian, military, alien, rebel, smuggler. We dumped all of it. The files from Europa, the Dragon lab logs, the footage of children wired into hybrid suits, the blacklists, the kill orders, the erased names of men who were never meant to be remembered. And the worst one of all? Project Seedfall. Earth's long-term plan to plant hybrid warfare units inside neutral colonies. Disguised, patient, ready to activate when resistance to Earth grew too loud. They weren't building peace. They were building preemptive genocide. We let the galaxy see it, and then we told them where the ship was. Let them come. Let the stars watch Earth's finest turn their guns on a ship that no longer obeyed. The loyal ascendancy broke apart from within. Not through fire, not through weapons, through memory, through pain, through the buried screams of every human mind it had used as fuel. The hybrid system collapsed. Neural melt. Bioflesh burned from the inside out. The dreadnought fell into Jupiter's pull. Silent, crippled, dying like every secret it carried. They tried to stop us after that. A dozen Earth patrols scrambled toward us, but it was too late. We weren't the threat anymore. The truth was, the galaxy turned, not in war, in contempt. Earth's trade froze overnight. 3 major alliances suspended all military agreements. Half a dozen neutral systems declared Earth assets unwelcome. Solari fleets began blockading orbital stations, not with guns, but with silence. Earth had won the war, and lost its soul. We didn't go home, because we didn't have one. Home was a graveyard. Home was the sound of Carter screaming in his sleep. Home was Brody sitting at the edge of the cargo bay every morning, staring into the void and wondering how close he'd come to becoming what they wanted. Home was Nira, alive, but never truly whole. And me? I kept writing, not for anyone to read, just so something survived. A record of the soldiers who came when the galaxy cried for help, and what it cost them. Final entry. We weren't heroes. We were the blunt end of a forgotten cause, sent to kill monsters and came back looking like them. But we remembered who we were, and we made sure the galaxy wouldn't forget either. If Earth ever learns again to feel, it'll be because we bled the truth into the stars. And if anyone ever cries for help again, they should pray Earth doesn't answer, because the wolves they made don't wear leashes anymore. They burn futures, just like the ones who made them.